Riding high off the smash of the success of 2000's Brave New World and its subsequent world tour in support, Iron Maiden were once again on top. Fans across the globe were stoked that Bruce Dickinson and Adrian Smith had both rejoined, and also very pleased with Brave New World's overall sound, hailed as their rebirth album. Getting back on the road with the Give Me Ed Till I'm Dead tour in late winter, early spring of 2003, the band teased at new material, playing the opening track, Wildest Dreams, from Dance of Death, which would not be released until the following fall. With the new lineup gelling nicely, the fellows of Iron Maiden took a more relaxed approach with Dance of Death, and it shows on the final album. Basically, the whole album is a straightforward philosophical moral play, tackling religious fundamentalism, personal liberty, the power elite's puppeteering of the masses, brotherhood, coping with being in the public spotlight, and struggling for a better life. Becoming more focused on the mundanities of everyday life, the soul and projection of this album suffered a bit, not fully capturing the more esoteric aspects in the background of the songs. However, it is still an overall solid record, and the honesty and integrity of the band shines through in a big way. Having passed through many tough periods, as well as the more positive times, all of the middle-aged members of Iron Maiden were in a comfort zone that has endured since the present lineup got back together in 1999. Forming such a tightly knit bond with each other personally as well as professionally, this album contained an almost imperceptible sense of camaraderie and unity that they rarely captured before this time. Today, I invite you to take a look inside of one of Iron Maiden's alleged Twilight albums, 2003's Dance of Death. Salutations, Iron Maiden followers. May your steps be well trod. Today, we are taking a tour through one of the band's more recent efforts, Dance of Death. As I said in the introduction, with the new six-piece lineup gelling, the follow-up to Brave New World was a different beast, much more informal and relaxed, yet lacking certain dimensions in many songs. That's okay by me, as the material on this album is still pretty solid, and also has some of their better tracks mixed in for flavor. While it ranks lower in the ratings than most of their catalog, Dance of Death still has a spark of that more esoteric flair that characterizes Maiden's distinct aura. I really enjoy the title track, Journeyman, Paschendale, and even though they didn't get as high of a rating, No More Lies, Gates of Tomorrow, and Montsegur are also quality tracks. As you will soon find out, my reasons for the lower rating of the bulk of this album's songs stems from the lack of projection of certain abstract qualities that they just capture better on other songs and albums. Not every song by any band can be the best, and like us all, they're human beings and pass through many tough times in their lives and just aren't able to fully realize a song or idea at the time they are recording the album. Again, as I said a few reviews ago, in accepting a band as human beings, really enjoying their personalities and outlook on life, you learn to accept even their weaker songs and albums because you can sympathize with whatever rough patches they were passing through when they were making a certain song or record, and see past the superficiality of the instrumentation and feel what they were feeling. It's an understanding that passes over any shallow judgment or opinion you might have of the song itself, and right into the esoterics of brotherly love, unity, forgiveness, and understanding that we're all part of the same human family. Iron Maiden are one of the most talented, compassionate, insightful, and enduring bands in rock history, and the quality of their material is consistently good, even if each album can't be amazing or transcendent. That being said, I invite you further into my outlook on 2003's Dance of Death. Shall we begin the tango? Wildest Dreams. The opening and the main riff feel very free-spirited, liberated, and like they're heading back out on the road. Very optimistic vibe on going through the catharsis of being a musician, relishing what you love, and just going out and doing it. The solos during the bridge, just prying the lid off your soul and letting everything loose is the vibe I got. I really love the breakdown, and vocals are a very strong presence by Brewster in the leading into the instrumental bridge. Neutral and critical notes, there's not a ton of adventure to this song. It's a very simple style, which kind of bogs it down a little bit in certain ways. It's lacking a lot of depth too, not very much projection or soul, besides the superficies of free-spiritedness. And it felt like it could have been more intricate, a little longer to fully capture the subject of the lyrics and the moods. So, let's see what I got it. And Wildest Dreams gets a 7.85 final rating out of 13. Okay, Rainmaker. I really love the opening and main riff. It really captures the essence of a rainy journey, the profundity of our lives, and the sorrow that we can endure. The verses are lovely, and the pre-chorus also has a lot of projection and passion, tons of soul in that passage. The bridge really conveys well the turmoil, the sadness of lost time, especially with the unison on the guitars during one part of that. On neutral and critical notes, it's too short of a song. The song doesn't fully capture due in part to its length, and the ideas aren't fully realized or crystallized. Very repetitive, there's too much, and I know all the pain, and also you tell me we can stop the rain, or start the rain. It really dampens the mood a bit, no pun intended on that one. It could have been multiple verses too. There's really only the one verse where he's singing wandering in the desert searching for the truth, and then after that it's just repetition of the same pre-chorus and chorus. Tons of that throughout the song that really bogs it down. So here's what I gave it. And Rainmaker receives a final rating of 9.52 out of 13. No More Lies. The introduction really has a nice feel to it. You can feel his struggle to overcome, building slowly with the soulful riffs into the verse. The lyrics are one of the highlights of this song, and Bruce delivers a solid vocal performance to back those up. I think Steve Harris wrote the lyrics to this song. The chorus is good, as he screams inside his head that he'll keep trying harder to be true to himself. The bridge has some solid instrumentation too. I really like the bridge. The pacing is great, the guitar solos are crisp, and really convey the difficulties faced in trying to live your life with honesty, but also being jurisprudent to certain people for fear of being persecution, or for being persecuted or ostracized. Neutral or critical notes, the verses are really lacking in projection. Despite the strong lyrics and vocals, instrumentally it fell a little bit flat too. The chorus, despite the strength in certain ways, is way too repetitive, and that bogs down the genuineness of the words and the overall vibes of the song. It has a disjointed feel at times too, it's kind of touch and go, and it just feels a little bit hollow in a lot of ways. Instrumentally, it's a very solid track though, but the mood, it's not fully captured through it, and there's not as much impact. So, let's see what I gave it. No More Lies receives a 9 out of 13 for a final rating. Montsegur starts off strong with a nice heavy riff conveying the march of war and crusaders on the move. Bruce's vocal performance is amazing in this song. It's got great projection of strife, and there's a lot of passion behind it. Definitely relatability. Lyrics are, calling out the dangers of religious fervor and faith. It's just a great job with those motifs and those themes. Overall, the instrumentation is really solid in this song. It captures the foreboding mood of the subject of these people in this stronghold being singled out and murdered as heretics, basically. The chorus is very intense, and the riffing and the drumming are superb. The instrumental bridge in the middle is a great passage. The solos capturing well the desperation of the people in the stronghold, and I love the guitar unison as they are overtaken and being systematically destroyed. The tempo shift into the second half of the bridge is amazing. The guitar riff and the unison, they really capture the tragic end of the heretics. Neutral or critical notes, the verses feel a little too much like historical worship and not as much sympathizing per se. And the chorus is way too repetitive. It could have been captured better and added a little bit more lyrically to it to make it more fluffed out, so to speak, and more genuine. Overall, it's lacking a certain dimension of compassion, and the esoterics and abstract qualities definitely could have been tweaked and made it better. But in any case, it's still a really good song, so let's take a look at the rating. Montségur's final rating is 9.83 out of 13. Okay, the title track, Dance of Death. Janick Gers actually wrote the lyrics to this one, and it's a really solid track, and it's got a fantastic acoustic guitar intro, building into a bass and a little bit of clean electric guitar riffs backing that up, conveying, well, a stroll through the swamp, nice quiet evening, crickets chirping, whatever other creatures abound in the night. He has the storytelling vibe to it. He's about to have a consciousness-altering experience, he just doesn't know it yet. The pacing really fits the mood of the verses as the whole circumstance continues to unfold. He's invited into this special place of the people living there in the Everglades down in Florida, I think. They allow him to participate in their firewalking ritual and other more esoteric aspects of their religious or spiritual lives. The instrumentation does really well to convey the nature of this experience. It really puts you into the scene with vivid pictures painted in my mind whenever I listen to the song and really pay attention to the lyrics. Great transition into the middle movement. The keyboards do well conveying the tense and vibrant atmosphere as he continues to ramp up his mental state. He's getting keyed up. He's enjoying it, but he starts to become afraid as things intensify, and he feels like he's losing his grip on himself. The middle bridge has some great solos that capture awesomely his flurry of thoughts as his mental state is continually revving itself up, and he's getting panicky, and his flurry of thoughts and his fear and his desperation to get away from this scene because it's something that's so earth-shaking to his own perceptions of his life and what he's experienced before. He headed full bore into the fervor of this ritual of these people walking on the coals and going into that trance, and his free-spiritedness just carries him off into the stars. The bridge has a very taut and intense vibe to it that nearly perfectly matches the mood of someone not accustomed to such an experience, getting caught up in it and placed right into the heart of the storm. The survival instinct always is trying to assert itself in the panic and fear, the flight, and then that need to run away from something that you don't understand. It is conveyed really well. And the ending passage, as the pace starts to quicken a little bit more, he hits the peak of emotional distress, but then once he escapes, he slowly calms himself back down and reflects upon what that hell just happened. On neutral or critical notes, the lyrics feel a little bit flat at times, like he's not being completely forthcoming about the nature of these experiences, either from fear or something else. And the overall vibes are just a little bit lacking here and there. Pacing could have been better in some subtle ways, but it's still a fantastic song, so give it a listen, and here's what I gave it. And Dance of Death receives a final rating of 11.83 out of 13. Gates of Tomorrow. It's got a really intense opening riff. It slowly builds up into the pre-verse, conveying our heart's struggles and conflicts as we go through our lives. The verses, I really like the riff. To me, it kind of had a Mega Man-esque vibe, which is kind of an interesting turnabout given that some of the older Mega Man tunes were inspired by Iron Maiden's music. But that aside, the vocal harmony during the verses really showcases the different voices in your head that are in conflict. The pre-chorus is very impactful. I love the lyrics about personal responsibility. There's a lot of passion behind that. It sets the foundation for the chorus very nicely. The chorus is amazing, very, very anthemic. I've been using that term a bit lately, but they do on some of these newer songs. It has a lot more of that quality to it. The vocal harmony sounds great. Lyrics are good too, and the ending riff leading back into the verses, it has great unison, multiple guitar tracks It's really, really sweet sounding. The bridge solos further showcase the trials of our hearts, trying to integrate and be more philosophical of our place in life. Forgive others for their misunderstandings of you as you try to express yourself. Neutral or critical notes, the verses feel a bit lacking, and like they could have been conveyed with more heart. And the chorus also does get a little repetitive. It takes away from the overall consistency and vibes of the song, but it's still a pretty decent song, so let's see what it got. And Gates of Tomorrow receives a 9.95 out of 13. Okay, New Frontier, the first and to date now, 10 years later, the only song that Nico McBrain has helped write. He wrote the lyrics to it, but he also came up with a bass line. He brought it to Steve Harris and said, "Oh, can we do something with this?" And Steve was like, "Oh, wow, that sounds like something I would write." And Nico's basically like, "Well, yeah, we've been playing together for 20 years. I know your style inside and out." And it just blossomed from there. So that's very cool. We'll see if he pens any more stuff before they possibly retire, whenever they decide to do that. Anyway, it's got a cool intro, nice high pace and tempo. The pre-verse riff is really nice. I like it. And the verses are very contemplative as he struggles to find the answers to the imponderable mysteries of life through the lens of his religious faith. Of course, he's a born-again Christian, so he's still trying to integrate all that which might be at odds with what's going on in the world at present. But in any case, the pre-chorus and chorus are good and convey his emotional distress of trying to rationalize all that's happening with modern genetics. And the bridge in the middle is also great. The solo really conveys his struggle. The guitar riff in unison after that further establishing his tribulation as he's trying to understand and pulling himself up out of the quicksand of delusion slowly, doing it in his own way. Neutral and critical notes, the verses are definitely lacking in the abstract or esoteric elements and not a ton of soul or projection. Very much an oversimplistic outlook with the lyrics, and the song's vibe is very childlike and innocent and also a little bit tragic, I thought. No, not detracting from Nico as a person, that's just the kind of the vibe I got. And the overall song vibes doesn't have a ton of projection but still has some good soul in many respects. So let's take a look at the rating. And New Frontier receives a final rating of 8.2 out of 13. Okay, Paschendale. I love the intro to this song. It's, we're taken into the end of a bloody battle, and then we relive it through a dying soldier's eyes. The lyrics are great and they really put you into the scene. There's the tragic, heartrending, and saddening vibes felt throughout all of this, and it really conveys the theme well. The verses pick up the heaviness as the battle begins again. The explosions, the tension, the fear, dead bodies everywhere, the deafening sounds of gunfire, just the whole panoramic painted through the instrumentation. Very well done. The chorus is also really impactful, and you can really sympathize with the young men in this battle as their lives are being exterminated one by one. And the bridge in the middle, it's awesome. The strings add a really nice ambience. As the battle continues, hundreds of young lives are lost. The tragedy of human bigotry and ignorance continues with the march of war. The third movement, the solos are very passionate. The overall vibe is tragic, and you can really feel saddened for the losses of our kindred in some nonsensical and bloody war. The final movement, the lyrics really get me choked up as these events unfold near the end of the battle. The whole passage is just beautiful and sad. Tons of soul, the vocal harmonies conveying all of these themes perfectly. On neutral or critical notes, it's somewhat disjointed in the instrumentation at times, but still an awesome song. And there are a few abstract elements a bit lacking, but as I said, it's a wonderful and very heartfelt song about a tragic battle in the past. So here's what I gave it. And Paschendale receives a final rating of 11 out of 13. Okay, Face in the Sand. It's got a beautiful and sad intro. There's a palpable atmosphere of human tragedy and reflection on the iniquities of the world. The verses continue on with that tragic vibe too, and mulling over the destructive people in the world and our tendency as humans to focus too much on the negative. The pre-chorus is soulful, and there's a tangible compassion for his fellow human beings, yet still acknowledging the negative trends that continue despite our best efforts to extinguish them. The bridge solos really convey the subject well, the conflicts of our hearts as we witness the destructive potentials of mankind unfolding in the world. And on some neutral or critical notes, the chorus, well, it's alright. It's very repetitive, especially with the whoa near the end with the chanting. It gets a little bit overly repetitious. The bridge intro is also kind of flat, not a ton of projection heading into the instrumental, and overall it just falls a bit short. Even though the compassion and humanity is felt beneath, it's obscured by the lack of focus on the broader abstractions of life. So let's see what it got for a rating. And Face in the Sand receives a final rating of 9.03 out of 13. Age of Innocence. The intro definitely conveys the innocent nature of most people of the world, their limited and biased perspective on how the world works, yet there's that looming menace behind that endures in the shadows of their minds, and the riffing of this passage has a lot of projection and soul, revealing that subject very well. The lyrics also conveying well his consciousness of the schemers and elite of the world, their puppeteering and psychological conditioning of the masses to do their bidding so they can continue on in power and hide from their own humanity because they're unable to integrate into our level of consciousness, I guess. The chorus is very hopeful, compassionate, and soulful, and is probably the highlight of this song. The solos do a great job in the middle of the song, conveying the inner struggle to hold on to hope and not let bitterness or vengeance consume us once we're aware of these things about the way the world is run. I really love the unison during the bridge near the end, just before it comes back in with a post-bridge verse. The strings really adding a nice background texture to the tragic yet hopeful vibes of this particular passage. On neutral or critical notes, the angry, bitter vibes kind of taint the song with a more destructive perspective, although these things do need to be said to ignite the spark of knowledge in the world, so things can eventually change for the better. I just thought that it was a little too focused on that. Instrumentation-wise, it could have been a little bit more adventurous to better convey the turmoil of the world, but it is still a different song, in the vibes and the sound for them, and it's also done with integrity. So, let's take a look at its final rating. And the final rating for Age of Innocence is 9.33 out of 13. Journeyman starts off strong, very contemplative and observant vibe, taking in life and wherever it takes you, just accepting that. There's a strong presence with the strings adding a lot to the mood, and the acoustic instrumentation is a perfect accompaniment to that. The verses are amazing, lyrically very strong, and it all works very well together to paint a philosophical picture of our lives as human beings that we endure somewhere after we die. Just very good writing. The chorus is strong, has a very independent vibe, very passionate and anthemic. Just works really well to keep the continuity of the song. The hopeful and optimistic vibes of the second half of the first verse, I really dug that. Reprises in the final movement as well, where he sings, in your lives you may choose desolation, and that's just a really good passage. There's that torch that can be carried by the more progressively minded people into their better way of life. The instrumental passage in the middle, continuing on with that introspective vibe, wrestling to make better choices and wanting to have it your way, but balancing that with weaving in and out of other people's paths in life too. Negative or neutral notes, the chorus, despite the strengths, does get a little bit repetitive. There's not a whole lot of lyrics to it. And it's just lacking a few subtleties here and there which break up some vibes and continuities of the expression of the lyrical themes, but again, it's still a really good song, so here we go. Journeyman's final rating, it is 10.7 out of 13. So, there you have a song-by-song retrospective of Iron Maiden's 2003 effort, Dance of Death. Now, we're going to take a peek at its average rating out of 13 points, as well as its ranking out of the 15 studio albums they've done up to this point. So, let us get started with that. Alright, and in a final analysis, Dance of Death receives a 9.66 out of 13 average rating, and ranking it 12th out of 15 studio albums. So, it's a little bit of a subpar album as far as Iron Maiden is concerned, but if you were to convert my rating into a 10-point scale, it would be just a little bit under 7.5 out of 10, so it's not a bad album by any means. Even the lower rated songs like Wildest Dreams and New Frontier are very listenable tracks. They're not terrible, it's just based on what I've observed from what they're capable of projecting through the instrumentation and the pictures they can paint in your mind, they've done a much better job. This was more informal record. It was a lot more tackling social issues and the human condition than it was with, projecting as much of that esoteric aspects, because they did focus more on the mundanities of the world, like I said in the introduction. So it's a good album. It's not unlistenable, and again, I would not stay away from this album just because I gave it a low rating. I would still recommend taking a look at it because there are some great songs on this album. Paschendale, Journeyman, and the title track, Dance of Death, are all great high-rated songs, over 8 out of 10. I believe if you were to convert Dance of Death's rating to a 10-point scale, it'd be about 9 out of 10. So I highly recommend checking out at least a few tracks on this album. Give some of the lesser songs a chance too, because they do have a lot of good aspects to them, and they're a very different sound for them. So they're continuing their progressive trend late into their careers, and we're going to be coming back at you in 2 weeks' time with their 2006 effort, A Matter of Life and Death, which is, in my book, one of their top 5 albums. So stay tuned for that, and thank you everybody who's stuck with me through all this, even though viewership has been down. I'm still pressing through to the very end of their catalog, and I will see everybody in 2 weeks. Take it easy.